Welcome back to the Boris Dirk podcast. I don't think either of us really has notes, but we have thoughts on every round two series. Max, you don't have a surgery date yet. How's the knee feeling?
Surprisingly good. I don't, it's a little weird. I'm sort of just like going around in my day-to-day life feeling normal, and then every once in a while I'll remember that one knee is fucked up.
Mhm.
But generally fine.
Okay, it's dark days for you and Dylan Brooks, but prayers be with
Mhm.
you.
Yep.
Let's start with Philly Boston because I want to talk about that series the least. Got a lot of
Yep.
Harden haters in my life that were really sweating out the last couple days, and then lo and behold, we got our good old 2 for 14 tonight. Um, it feel and not to take away what Harden did in game one, absolutely crazy. I People were saying like it was a flashback to Houston Harden, which I don't quite agree with because it feels like he just doesn't have that explosiveness. It looks a little bit different, a little bit more like old man game because
hmm
peak Houston Harden was, an elite athlete in his own way. Um, but he was crazy in that game one, and yeah, probably the best game of his career. Game two, we're back down to earth. It wasn't a fun watch, and it feels like the series has just begun, and we're heading into Philly.
Yeah. Embiid came back for game two. He did not look like he had any sort of rhythm offensively. Defensively, he was actually solid, at least in the first half. He had 5 blocks in the first half. And a few of them were like real agile plays where he kind of came out of nowhere to block it and save it and keep it in bounds, all these different things.
Yeah,
But in general, on offense, he didn't look comfortable at all. And also, it got into a very familiar pattern, I feel like, for the Sixers in the playoffs, which is where they just struggle to get the ball into Embiid. Like, he'll be sort of calling for it at the elbow, and Boston's pretty good at denying the initial catch. And they'll just kind of swing the ball around the perimeter until there's 7 seconds on the shot clock and realize someone else has to do something. Um, but very curious to see how game three goes because I mean, Boston through 2 games, I think is clearly the better team. Philly really struggles to stop them. Even in game one, Boston was scoring pretty
yeah.
like easily.
Malcolm
Um,
Brogdon, widely considered one of the smartest guys in the league, forgot what team he was on, but obviously that game could have gone either way. Why does it make sense that they won with Embiid out and lost with Embiid back? It just we live in the upside down for some reason. It just like the gambler in me was like, like fully expected this to happen, but
I know.
here we are.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Knicks Heat series later, but I'm almost now like more scared of the Heat without Jimmy Butler than I am the Heat with
Yeah,
Jimmy
yeah,
Butler.
nothing makes sense, but we're still
Yeah.
gonna have a podcast. So, uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I think Joe Mazzulla, he seems like his players really like him, but I don't think that he just doesn't give off that like competitive edge that I felt like they had with Ime. He
Yeah.
seems like a much nicer person than Ime, at least in coach mode.
hmm
We still don't know what the hell happened with Ime in his personal life, but
hmm
yeah, the Celtics don't have I feel like they don't bring the same like competitive physicality. Their defensive numbers reflect that this year. And it's been a rough couple weeks for them defensively, but today the Sixers couldn't get anything going. Um it still just doesn't, like I still believe that the Celtics are going to win the series despite, the successful road trip for Philly.
Yeah.
I just think the Celtics have too much firepower. I think like guys that are really solid players like haven't even hit their stride yet. Like we're still waiting for Rob Williams to really assert himself, and like tonight was a step in the right direction. Um,
Yeah. Although I think this might not be the series for him. Like,
yeah,
I feel like this series, their best approach is spreading the Sixers out. And Al Horford got any open three that he wanted tonight, and he honestly wasn't super hot from three. But the like when they go 5 out, Embiid is not coming out all the way to the 3 point line to contest these shooters, so they can really get off 3 point looks with impunity. Um, Whereas when Robert Williams is around, Embiid has a little bit more of a license to hang out next to the basket. But
hmm
when they go with that Brogdon, White, Tatum, Brown, Horford lineup or swap Smart in there or whatever. Um, that it seems like Philly doesn't really have an answer for that on the defensive end.
Yeah.
Which I'm curious. I mean, I'm curious to see how it goes in Game 3 because this is a classic. There was a stat that now it's 15 straight, but yeah, 15 straight home teams have won Game 2 after losing Game 1 at home.
Yeah, yeah, it's exactly what I said after. We'll get to the Lakers Warriors, but our friend said like, don't even play game two. Just
Yeah,
just go to LA. We know the Warriors are going to take game two, and that's what happened here. It's the Celtics aren't going to be in great shape generally when Horford and Smart are 2 for 12 combined from three. Because Derek White had an amazing shooting year. I think he was like 38% this year, but the 2 years before that, he was hovering around 30. And so
yeah,
when Horford's shot isn't falling, we all know Smart, streaky as a shooter. You can, that really like I think benefits the Sixers because Embiid can be elite when Embiid's really locked in defensively, like in drop, when he can just hover around the rim. And so that that's you got to believe that's why Missoula's been starting Horford, going to Horford before Rob Williams is the ability to stretch the floor. So they're gonna need Horford to not shoot like he did tonight. So, like to be in some of the closer games as the series advances. It won't be as easy as it was tonight. But overall, the Celtics locked down. It still feels like they have the best two wings in the series by far, and you don't usually lose when that's the case. Um,
Hmm. On that,
yeah,
as someone who spends a lot of time rooting against Boston, um, my experience is usually that I'm much more afraid of Jaylen Brown than I am of Jason Tatum, and I don't really know
yeah.
what that means, but I
Finals
am
2022.
I am I it's no secret I'm not a fan of Boston. I'm a Knicks fan. I dabble with the Lakers as well because my dad's from LA, so
You
it's
dabble with
natural.
Steph. You dabble with Steph.
Yeah. And I dabble heavily with Giannis as well. And I didn't like how that went last year. So I spend a lot of time rooting against the Celtics. And
Big fan of
whenever,
greatness.
yes, whenever Tatum is like getting into his dribble package and stepping up into a three, I'm like, okay, live with that. Whereas whenever Jaylen Brown is like on the break and pulling up, even if it's from 3 feet behind the 3 point line, my heart always stops and I feel like it always goes in.
Yeah,
And I'm not totally sure what that means because I still think Jason Tatum's a better player than Jaylen Brown,
yeah,
but just something I've noticed watching them. And the other thing I've noticed is this is basically the same team from last year with the addition of Brogdon, who's been huge. But I think the biggest ceiling raiser for them relative to last year is a confident Derek White because throughout the playoffs last year, Derek White kind of his confidence came and went. His shot was not great in the postseason, but he is like at times their third best player.
yeah.
Um,
He has been
and
this season. But
yeah,
last year they were getting shooting throughout the playoffs from Grant Williams, who
mhm,
this year fell out of favor
mhm.
with the rearranged coaching staff. Tonight he hit 4 threes. Kind of bummed about it because I'm hoping that he's just completely ditched by the league so the Blazers can get him at a good price. Um, because I know Grant Williams is notoriously really annoying to have in the locker room, but I don't know. I want a guy that plays hard defense, is that big and strong and can shoot. So
I mean, he's got
yeah.
Miami written all over him to me.
Oh
Like they
my
need a
God.
four.
Yeah.
They need a big four. He'd be perfect for them.
Yeah. Pat Riley might kick his ass, but we'll see. Yeah. You don't need to convince me. You know that I don't think Tatum is quite that dude.
Mhm.
I think there's more alpha in Jalen, but Jason is just a more complete player. And
Yeah.
uh yeah, I think that my instincts tell me that Jason Tatum is just an elite number two, like top of the line number two.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, it's just like a human body language. I didn't like when he tweeted about about having like the best Celtic scoring season ever, like surpassing Larry Bird, because it's like, come on, like
Yeah.
he wrote something like, he didn't just retweet it, he wrote like that man, that's really crazy stuff. And it's like, yeah, it is, but like, Donovan Mitchell averaged 30 this year, and it's a different game, stats look a little different, and you gotta win something before are saying that you're in that Larry Bird conversation.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, but still a huge Tyrese Maxey fan. I think
Yep.
as much as I doubt Tatum's ability being the number one guy on a title team, I think I have even less faith in James Harden, even as a number two guy. And tonight, 2 for 14. I game one was tough for that argument, but I'm sticking with it. I believe um the Celtics will win as the sample increases in this series.
Yeah. I tend to agree. I agree. Maxey's been awesome. And yeah, the only other real difference for Philly versus last year is their role players are a lot better. Um, Melton gives them something. He was really good in game one on the defensive end, hitting shots. PJ Tucker, is always making shit happen. And then Paul Reed's honestly developed into a pretty nice backup five for them. I thought he gave him some pretty good minutes today. And in game
Yeah.
one, he was solid too. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Embiid, three rebounds. He didn't play even 30 minutes, but still clearly wasn't quite himself. We'll see. We'll see if he finds his footing in game three. All right. Heat Knicks. Let's go straight to your heart.
yep.
Before we say anything positive, the Knicks only won because of a terrible call. Gabe Vincent had the rebound and the layup, and it's a different game. However, it turns out Caleb Martin is a max guy. And yeah, the Heat make absolutely no sense. I looked at Andy while I was watching this game with him, and I said, if they announce that Jimmy Butler's out for the rest of the series, I think I'm still picking the Heat to win the series. And it doesn't make a bit of sense. They're starting G Leaguers, they're starting veteran minimums, they are pulling guys out of the grave, and I don't get it. But yeah, the Knicks offense was a little bit stuck in mud. This game too, even though Jimmy wasn't on the floor, felt like how the series looked in my head coming into it. It's like two really tough physical athletic teams throwing bodies at each other. Offense won't always be great, but Brunson had some awesome moments, did Brunson type things. And God, dude, I think it's Josh Hart talked a little bit about this in his post game, but I think he's really starting to benefit from the way that some teams sag off of him because his shooting wasn't great for a little while. Because Josh Hart getting momentum to the basket before anyone's touching him is a really dangerous thing, and
Hmm.
and also when he shoots now and they're sagging off, if he misses it, he also has a clear path to the basket for an offensive rebound, which has been a factor
Yes.
for the Knicks this whole playoff. So yeah, man. 1-1.
1-1. The first game, it was weird. The Knicks felt like they were in control until suddenly Kevin Love threw four full court outlet passes for layups, and suddenly we were down 10. Um,
Yep.
Game two felt like the Heat were the better team for 40 minutes, and then down the stretch through some Brunson, Hart, Magic, and some Randall as well. Because Randall, I thought, had a really good game too. Probably, honestly, might be the best playoff game of his career. He's only had like 8 of them, but
Six
I thought
nine
it
hard.
was um more like 6'9" Westbrook, I think.
I just
But
mean 6-9. Well, Westbrook, I'm not worried about Westbrook quitting on my team mid playoffs.
that's fair, I
That's
guess.
more I meant between the ears. It wasn't the leftiness. All right, go on.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, I thought Spo, episode. I feel like every episode we're gonna end up giving Spo a shout out, but he came in with a great game plan.
Yeah.
Just the way that they got the Knicks defense in rotation, always it seemed like there was always someone coming open for three or cutting to the basket, and I would have liked to see the Knicks switch a little bit more to just trying to kind of try to gum that up because like
Mhm.
no one on that Heat team was gonna even Bam. Who Bam didn't have a very good offensive.
Yeah.
None of these games have been very good offensive games for
No.
Bam. Caleb Martin, Gabe Vincent, Kyle Lowry, Max Struess, Duncan Robinson, like, which is infuriating as someone rooting against it because you're like, are we going to really get knocked out by these guys who, in any other coach's hands, would be like back of the rotation pieces? Maybe not
Yeah.
Gabe Vincent. Gabe Vincent might be an all star for all I know, but
Yeah. He would kind of he looks like Raptors Van Vliet in 2019.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, I think in terms of the switching, I mean, I'm really confused about Tibbs. Like
Yeah.
I'm having a really hard time pegging Tibbs, like just like where he ranks in the remaining coaches in the playoffs and in the league in general, because the approach that he drew up against Cleveland was like masterful. Like it was just like
Yes.
he was a huge asset to New York in that round one. And they did everything right. It all made sense. And yeah, I agree with you on the switching. It looks like they're just scrambling in a sort of maniacal way for the lack of offense that they face
Yeah.
when Jimmy Butler's out specifically. And if you told me that the Heat were going to be in prime position to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals and Jimmy would miss a game, like, and they're still 1-1, and Bam's career has stalled in an interesting way where maybe it hasn't, and I just need to accept that this is who Bam is. He has offensive
Hmm.
strengths and weaknesses. He's elite defensively. He's never going to be a shooter, but like he can make sort of like that free throw line in bucket when like Mitchell Robinson's at the basket. Like Bam has some touch and he has some passing skills. But really, the defense is his bread and butter. But all in all, it makes no sense now because, yeah, it just I'm done pretending that this series like I know what I'm going to see in Game 3. Anyone who tells you they do is full of shit.
No clue. Yeah. Shout out to Isaiah Hartenstein, who was really huge getting O boards down the stretch of this game. There was one possession, which Knicks beat writer Fred Katz, best in the business, wrote an article about today, which I think lasted over a minute of game time, where Hartenstein got 4 offensive rebounds in a row or 5 offensive rebounds in a row on the same possession, and it led to the Hart game tying three
Yeah.
uh, towards the end of the fourth quarter. And then Brunson came down, hit a three that put him ahead. Um, those two guys, Brunson and Hart, like by the time like this playoff run and whatever comes in the future is over, I feel like they're going to be as beloved in New York as like John Starks is in that kind of like cult hero sort of way.
Okay, don't
Especially
don't
Josh
don't go
Hart.
there too quickly. All right, it's year one. I actually agree with you, and
Yeah.
it's good podcast fodder, but let's see some years first, because every
Okay. It's not like John
every
Starks.
good player I know gets sick of the team they're on, except Josh Hart.
Fair. I don't even know if John Starks was ever even an all-star in his day. Like he's kind of that
Yeah,
level of player. But
yeah, he's yeah.
the the Knicks got back to their rebounding identity more in the fourth quarter, and I'm not sure what spurred that. I don't know if it was just an effort thing or if they were able to find a weakness to attack more, but they should be out rebounding this team because the Heat are often trotting out like 5 guys who are under 6'6", or 4 guys who are under 6'6". And if Bam's not on the floor, it's the corpse of Kevin Love or Cody Zeller, whoever it may be. One thing, look, on the one hand, it's very concerning for the Knicks that they barely beat a Heat team that didn't have their best player. On the other hand, I thought Randall's return was pretty encouraging, even if you don't like the process on offense. His sheer size and physicality against this small Miami team draws a ton of attention. And we were seeing in the first quarter, like he was drawing doubles and kicking to RJ for threes. RJ had another great, at least first half. Um, he just draws a ton of attention against this Heat team because physically, even Bam, he was like blowing by Bam on drives. They don't really have guys who can match him physically in the way that Cleveland did.
Mhm.
Um, so that's one reason for optimism for the Knicks is as he continues to get a little bit more comfortable, um, having him to take some of that offensive load off of Brunson, which helped Brunson kind of get off a little bit more in the second half, I think, as
Mhm.
well, is big for the Knicks. And the other thing I'm going to say about the Heat, which especially on the road, they're absolutely elite at, is stopping runs. Because every time in both game down the stretch of game one and game two, it felt like the Knicks had a little momentum where they'd like hit a basket in a row, get a stop, go down to get another basket. Usually Kyle Lowry, but someone would come up with like a strip or draw
Mhm.
charge or like, pressure the Knicks into dribbling off their foot or just some thing that would stop the crowd from getting all the way into it. And the crowd didn't really get into it until the end of the fourth quarter when the Knicks were able to string a few stops and scores together. But I don't know how exactly they do it, but they're absolutely elite at stopping those runs, which are so key to
Yeah.
getting a crowd into the game.
Yeah. We've got Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is like like he's the closest thing to peak LeBron athleticism, like size, strength, speed, force of nature in the league. But like once you get down from the god tier, like Julius Randle's like size, strength, speed is like really, really, really impressive.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a crazy vertical, but I feel like every other aspect of his athleticism pops.
Hmm.
And so yeah, it's never been about his ability. I don't like the tone that he sets a lot of the time, and he will fill the stat sheet like he did last night, and he can take on a usage rate unlike most guys in the league. But I just think the culture that you contribute to, the tone you set really matters. And I just don't like that there have been moments in the last year or two when it looked like he didn't even want to be a Knick.
Yeah.
When really it seemed like the franchise was giving him an amazing situation. And there's no, for instance, Mitchell Robinson has made a lot of guys better in these playoffs just with his force of will, his tone setting on the boards. Like when Hardenstein was getting those rebounds, I was like, that to me felt like when Jordan Poole goes on a shooting bender and it's like he learned from Curry. Like
Hmm.
Hartenstein had some rough moments in the beginning of this season. And it feels like as Mitchell Robinson's gotten better, he's elevated their entire front court. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Especially
yeah,
rebounding, by the way.
yeah,
Hardenstein rebounding early in the season was pretty weak. But yeah, I have no feel for how this series is going to go. I was texting with my brother today. He was like, I could see anything from the Heat winning in five to the Knicks winning in six or seven to the Heat winning in six or
yeah,
seven. The Knicks winning in five seems outlandish. I don't think that would happen, but anything else I think is on the table.
yeah,
And neither of these teams are explosive enough offensively that they're like really going to blow the other team out. And they're both gritty enough defensively that they can like stick in the game. All these games for both fan bases are just going to be sort of heart palpitations type of thing down the
yeah,
end. And it'll just come down to late game execution between Brunson Randall and the Knicks offensive rebound rampage versus
yeah.
Jimmy and Heat Black Magic.
Mitchell Robinson's rebounding feels contagious in the way that, like, like baseball hitting in the playoffs, a team can just like catch fire at the right time. And so
Mm-hmm.
let's see. It was like 50 to 34 on the boards in game two.
Yeah.
Obviously Jimmy's a solid rebounder, but that's something the Knicks can win every game in this series.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to another big whose attitude I don't always want in my locker room. Phoenix, Denver, where I am really worried about DeAndre Ayton. And I feel like some of the reasons I picked Denver to win this series, although I didn't expect it to be a blowout. It still might not be. It's just 2-0. Nuggets took care of business. They look like the better team. But yeah, Ayton, I just don't think can make it hard enough on Jokic. It doesn't look like it so far. Phoenix is giving so much respect to Jokic and his gravity on offense that like simple give and goes from the high post or at the top of the key like are getting guys layups, whether it's Jamal Murray or Porter or Aaron Gordon. Like it's just cutters galore for the Nuggets, and they're not even neutralizing Jokic as a scorer. Like it feels like they often trap or just pressure really hard when he gets the ball at the nail or outside the 3-point line, and it's like a smaller guy gives him the ball, and it's like when Steph dumps the ball, and that's when the play starts. And Jokic is just like it's like a West Coast offense, and he's just hitting cutters for high percentage twos. And yeah, Jokic, we said that the championship belt for best player in the world was up for grabs. Jokic in these first two games has made it really clear that he's interested in wearing
Yep.
said belt. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Like a fitting.
and KD, it doesn't matter that KD is making Devin Booker's life this much easier. It does matter, but we need something closer to vintage KD for the Suns to get back into this series. Um, and the last thing I'll say before I give you the mic is I've noticed that there is a particular negative emotional effect that DeAndre Ayton's ups and downs have on the Suns. And it's been widely reported that there's been tension in that relationship. I mean, like, let's not forget that Monty Williams said that like he hadn't, or Ayton said he hadn't talked to Monty Williams like from like end of playoffs to beginning of regular season. So we know that relationship's at least been fraught in the past. And I just noticed when Ayton doesn't contest at the rim, when he's just like standing under the basket, or he gets beat on a rebound just because he wasn't locked in enough, I see the way that that impacts other guys on the team, whether it's the Hall of Fame vets or like just the guys who play really hard, like Josh Okogie. And um, that's why I feel so confident that the Nuggets are going to win this series. I feel like their Jokic is breaking their soul because his matchup is the guy who has this complicated relationship with the guys around him.
Yeah. Um, I totally agree. There was a sequence in game two where Aiton had a few shots right around the basket and just sort of tried to do these soft little bunnies and missed two or three putbacks in a row and then got the rebound ripped away from him by like KCP or something.
Yeah.
And I was
He
just
got
like,
Zion by KCP.
yeah, they could have had Luka Doncic.
Oh God, don't do this. Oh no.
um, but I think the Suns really missed an opportunity in game two because I thought Denver was leaving a lot on the table early in that game. They were missing layups, they were missing open shots. I thought in game one, they were really like paying a lot of attention to Jokic. In game two, it felt like as the game went on, they tried to be like to dare him to beat them as a scorer, which he did.
Mm-hmm.
And Jamal Murray was ice cold in that game. He was awesome in game one. Game two, he was not. Um, like he only made a couple shots throughout the whole game, and they
It's
still,
called cryotherapy. That's what James Harden's telling himself.
yeah, they still weren't able to. Like Denver was hanging around all that game despite not playing close to their best, I thought. And Phoenix really seemed like they were clawing in that game and like
Yeah.
really playing at close to maximum capacity. And then Chris Paul strains his groin. So this is the team that had at best four reliable players who just lost one of them, and the other one is DeAndre Ayton, and you never know where his mental state is. So it's like KD, Booker, and then a bunch of guys who Denver doesn't really care about, leaving
Yeah.
open, letting them cook. Um, and then beyond that, the thing that was so scary about Phoenix when I saw them some in the regular season was it felt like if they were ever in a close game at the end of it, and this was the case even before they got KD, if they were ever in a close game, it felt like the clutch decision making of Chris Paul combined with the sort of tough mid range making of Devin Booker made them a really scary team in clutch situations. And then you throw KD into that, and you just have all these shot makers and decision makers in the last few minutes of the game where if you just need to get a basket, you trust them to get it done. I
Mm-hmm.
think Jokic is probably the most reliable clutch option in the league to generate like high quality shots because anything he shoots from the post is a high quality look,
Yeah.
whether it's, a face up jumper, a hook shot, or whatever. And he often gets his own offensive rebound too. And then if you double him to prevent him from getting that look off, you're getting an open look from three or a cut or something. So, I mean, if you just need one shot, sure, maybe KD's the answer. But in terms of like generating efficient offense down the stretch of a game, like Jokic can match what the Suns have in terms of clutch shot making and scoring. So
Yep.
I think, especially with Chris Paul out, I mean, Phoenix is obviously they have to win game three, but they have to win both of these. Like, and I don't think that they can because like we talked about the sort of math problem they were facing in the Clippers series, which didn't end up being an issue because the Clippers lost their two best players, but they
Yeah.
just rely on making difficult shots, which Booker and KD can both do. They can both hit these like drifting 18 footers at a much higher rate than most guys. But
But Max,
when
it's an
Jokic,
art form. It's not only about math.
yeah, no, I'm sure.
No, but
I'm sure.
they listened to the math nerds in game two.
Yeah.
They finally took more threes than the other team, except they were 6 for 31. And it hurts when the Nuggets were 7 for 27 and
hmm
they lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and when you combine the, terrible 3-point shooting with 5 free throw attempts, you're not, you just can't. That's a losing formula. That's a losing formula in the
Hmm.
regular season and the playoffs. And Kevin Durant needs to get to the line more than twice. That's what superstar Hall of Famers do. Like, when you're 10 for 27 and it's not your night, like get to the line 9, 10 times to just like claw yourself to 30. That's the standard that we hold KD to, even though he's never been like, a LeBron or an Embiid or a Giannis level free throw attempt guy.
Yeah.
That he like it's a bad sign that he's in his mid 30s and he took 2 free throws in this game. Um, and he played 44 minutes. He's been playing 40 minutes every night. So like it feels like it should only get worse because at his age and with his injury history, like it would be crazy to think that after all these 40-minute nights, like he's just gonna get better and better. But again,
Hmm.
it's KD. He's proved me wrong at every turn. He elevates when I think that he's on his way downhill, or uphill, depending on
Hmm.
your leg muscles. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's really that simple. Like superstar KD, the guy that we saw on the Nets against the Bucks, losing in game 7, toe on the line. Like that guy can get the Suns back into this series, but we haven't seen him yet in the playoffs.
Yeah. And I saw a clip of like Nick Wright talking about this on First Things First. And usually, I don't love the debate show takes,
Nick
but
Wright's the GOAT.
I do love Nick Wright. But he was like, is like Katie can't get swept 2 times in a row.
Yeah,
Um, like that's not a great look for,
it
and
can't
he's just
happen.
gonna have, yeah. And we can't say anything about that until or unless it actually happens. And I feel like they'll get one of them at home just because that Phoenix crowd is so good. But I see it going back to Denver 3-1 and ending in 5, honestly. I just think Denver's offense is too good. It has no holes, and Phoenix defense is not one that's designed to stop it. Um, so yeah, I think they're gonna have. If I made a pick, I'd say they'll have a nice little break before the bloodbath of Lakers Warriors and whoever emerges from that to play against them.
Yeah, what a quietly impressive offseason from Denver to just like at the margins get a couple guys who are such better fits with their best players. We thought we were going to do Lakers Warriors, but we're realizing now that we shouldn't give you a pod when game 2 is within 24 hours. So we're going to do a big post game 2 breakdown of that California series. And yeah, any closing thoughts on these round 2s?
Um, I hope everyone stays healthy. These round 2 series have all been
Yeah.
awesome so far. And I'm very excited to talk about Warriors Lakers tomorrow because it might be like I was trying to think of a series with more a second round series with more sort of star power and storylines in my lifetime, and I can't think of one.
No, doesn't
Um,
exist.
it doesn't exist. It feels like a finals series between a 6 and a 7 seed, which is crazy. But yeah, the second round's been crazy and will continue to be.
You mentioned Nick Wright, KD can't get swept twice in a row. It doesn't look great. We can't live in a society where Steph beats LeBron here. So I'm glad the Lakers won game 1. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Peace.
I do like being right. Ask my ex-husband.
Happens every time. X. There's a reason it's X, huh?